Hey guys, Zoids, everyone else. Just want to talk a little bit about like kind of normative employment or work sort of frustrations, like what it feels like sometimes, the angsty kind of feel you get sometimes when you're dealing with a lot of things that seem pretty normal or whatever you want to call it amongst coworkers and employees and things like that in general, especially when you're schizoid or a cluster A person and you don't have the same kind of values and concerns about like what is it that you should be wasting your time on or constantly, gossiping about or whatever it is that people are doing at any given point or time. When it comes to, workplace environments and stuff like that, it's frustrating. It's very frustrating, and I'm sure you can understand that because you've probably dealt with it to some point or another. But you want to just do your job. You want to go in, you want to do your job. You have to mask up because there's a certain level of expectation of friendliness or what have you that is expected from other coworkers, and obviously you're being paid also to present such a demeanor in front of customers, especially if you've ever worked retail or anything in which you deal with customers themselves. You have a certain layer of masking you need to do. Even a normative person has to do it to a degree. They complain about having to smile all the time at work, even though they're having a bad day. But the only issue is when you're a schizoid, every day is a bad day when you have to do this sort of stuff. So it's kind of not, it's not really the same thing, right? And the reasons it's bad is very different than the reasons that somebody else might say it's bad. But in any case, dealing with constant use of, say, no, of blaming other people, uh, having no accountability, the use of kind of like rationalization for the sake of putting themselves in a position in which they are inculpable of their own actions, behaviors, responsibilities, so on and so forth. Being insincere about their intent, being insincere about their motivators and things like that at the workplace, being insincere about, especially when you're talking something like management, when they're very insincere about what it is they want from you, what it is they expect in comparison to what it is they don't expect, and so on and so forth. Instructions being inconsistent, things being based on like kind of like emotional aptitude or mood of said person when, if they're having a stressful day or they're having a this day or they're having a that day, and how that reflects on their ability to do their job as a manager or do their job as a shift lead or whatever you want to call it, or just your fellow employees being able to do their job. Like, there's just so much stuff that is just constantly in flux in a kind of normative work environment. And a lot of it's emotionally driven. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to be one of those guys with schizoids that say, oh, I don't have feelings. We don't have feelings. We don't have emotions. I've already gotten past that point. We have feelings. We just don't care about these particular things. And we don't prioritize them like it seems most people do, status and social hierarchies and things of that nature. Um, all I care about is, can I do my job? Is my job being restricted or obstructed in some capacity? Uh, is my ability to do my job as instructed, as trained, and so on, is that being obstructed? Are decisions being made by other people uh, that are personal decisions or decisions that have to do more with them trying to do as little work as possible or trying to pass the buck, if you will, onto other people, or things like nepotism, things like favoritism and stuff like that? Are those things getting in the way of my ability to do my job? That's what I care about, because I just want to do my job and I want to go home. I don't want to be there for fun. I don't want to deal with problems that people are having with one another. I don't want to take any of this stuff back home and worry about it, worry about whether my hours will be affected, uh, whether anything is going to be affected. That's going to allow me to make the money I need to make in order to sustain the resources that I need to have in order to have my family be in a moderately kind of, even if it is paycheck to paycheck living state. And for the schizoid, that sort of stuff is especially hard because we don't find ourselves understanding why it's occurring to begin with. Or we understand it on an intellectual level, but we don't really feel it. We don't understand why it's necessary, what it even means, or we don't empathize with any of it. Don't empathize with this idea of favoritism and stuff like that. The only thing I empathize with is the idea of, hey, let's do this as efficient as possible. Let's make things as fair as possible. Let's create an environment in which people's abilities are being kind of not accentuated, but you're creating a stable enough environment so that everyone that's willing to work, can do their job, can make contributions that are unique, and we can implement those contributions if it seems to fit the situation, or adapting to changing situations and stuff like that. So frustrated. Oh, and just for make sure nothing gets used against me type purposes, I'm not necessarily talking about, or I'm not talking about necessarily in any capacity about my current job or anything like that. I'm just talking about the work experience as a whole and the many problems that seem to come with it. So, disclaimer, right? How do you handle it? How do you handle these things? Like, I mean, there's different ways, right? You can get upset, you can brood over it, you ruminate over it, which I do sometimes. Other people can completely just disassociate from it once they get home. Uh, but, it's this sort of stuff that makes me dread going back into work, right? This sort of stuff that I dread because I know that I'm going to get back and either something's not going to been completed, something was done, something was miscommunicated, somebody's not being held accountable for this or that. But other people are, and so on and so forth. And that kind of stuff is, I dread it. I just want things to just work efficiently, work in a productive fashion. And I've noticed that, dealing with their schizoids, whether it's on the server or whatever, and working with them in other capacities, it seems to be the case. It seems to be more focused, or the emphasis seems to be placed on that. Not so much individual feelings about material resource related or status related matters. Ego related, conventional ego sort of related matters, I guess is a good way to put it too. Not saying that the schizoid doesn't have an ego, because they definitely do, but it's usually kind of pretty in check, and it's also very much internalized in like an individual way. It's not so much expressed outwardly in a social fashion most of the time. So, yeah, I'm curious as to what you guys experience, or even if you don't want to post here, maybe you can post on the server and kind of discuss it a little bit. I'm very curious as to how you handle those things, what you think about them, and the kind of distress, anxiety, frustration, and so on that it causes you. Like, I could relay a story. I'll relay a story that has nothing to do with my current position. I worked with somebody, right? And it was, well, I can say what company it is because it no longer exists. So I worked at Fresh and Easy a few years ago when it was around here in the United States. Um, I ran into a couple of times, or a couple of issues with interpersonal stuff that I just didn't understand why it even had to occur. And one instance was in which there was a person that I worked with continuously for a long time there, and everything was fine. But then at some point or another, well, we had been, making comments and just how do I put it? It was one of those coworker relationships where it's like, oh, you make fun of me, I make fun of you, you make fun of me, I make fun of you, I make fun of this aspect, you make fun of me for this, you make fun of me because I'm fat, I make fun of you because of this or that or whatever, right? But apparently, it got to a point where the jokes I was making, or apparently because maybe that particular day they weren't having a good day or something. It's the kind of stuff you have to worry about. So now the rapport was no longer in effect, and so though they were reciprocating like they usually were, internally they were having all these problems. And so instead of communicating that to anyone, like myself, straightforwardly, in which I would have said, "Oh, absolutely, if that is an issue, then I will immediately stop." Um, they like to go through other channels. So that ended up getting, dressing down of some sort. But it didn't culminate into anything because they could see that I was completely confused by, baffled to why they would even surmise anything outside of the fact that it was a back and forth, sort of rapport building exercise. At least I thought it was, in my opinion. It made the time pass by. It was funny, and I'm pretty self-deprecating, so other people, I guess, are not. They just like to pretend they are. So now, because of that incident, you can't make jokes with people, you can't make fun of people, you can't say certain things, you can't blah 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 blah. And I keep running across these type of situations where you let down the mask a little bit and just be yourself a little bit, and then you stumble across all these issues with coworkers where it's like, oh, now it's a problem. It wasn't a problem before, but now it's a problem. Now it's changed. It's now become a problem because maybe you didn't like that day I mentioned that you didn't complete a task or do something, or you didn't like that I tried to hold you accountable for something that, whatever. So now, because of that reason, or I tried to talk to you about something, those incidents are no longer in effect. So the rapport is now gone. And so now you've taken personally my criticism or constructive criticism of your either work ethic or some aspect of your competence that can improve. And even if I don't say it in any rude capacity, I try to be as cordial as possible. It gets translated into, oh, okay, you're in the out group now. You are now an enemy. And so any other previous behavior that we were interacting with that was fun or positive is now turned negative. And it just seems so insincere and absurd. Because I welcome constructive criticism of every kind. I got a fly flying over me. You want to tell me why I'm doing my job wrong or why I'm doing this or that wrong? You tell me. You convey that. I'll listen, and I'll make a judgment as to whether it's a good sound argument or it's not. That's it. That's the best I can do. And I wish I could expect the same from other people, but it doesn't work that way. And that's rough. That's real rough, especially when your system of thinking is kind of focused on that. How can we make this better? How can we make this work more? What things can we do to improve each other's stations in life so that everyone wins? That's just not how things work, huh? At least in Normistan. In any case, that's about it. I just want to get that out. I don't know if it actually made me feel any better or worse or what it did, but I wanted to share that. Also, if you like these rambles, if you like what I'm doing with the server along with the other people that are working very hard on it, please think about supporting me on Patreon. Please think about supporting my work on PayPal or whatever else. I want to eventually just turn this into something I do full time. So if you want to make that happen or help me make that happen, please think about contributing. Outside of that, sub, bell, all that kind of junk. Fucking fly. All the usual stuff. And I hope to see you next time.